Alina Brooks stared at the towering spires of the Galactic Defense Academy with a mixture of awe and trepidation. The massive space station rotated slowly around a neutral planet, its metal exterior gleaming in the light of an unfamiliar sun. She adjusted her threadbare backpack, the same one she'd used throughout her rural Earth education, and tugged at her ill-fitting uniform pants. The scholarship had covered tuition, but apparently not proper tailoring. "Welcome to GDA, Cadet. Ally Broccoli." The automated welcome kiosk flickered as it butchered her name, its holographic interface glitching slightly. Species: human. Origin: Earth. Admission Status: Diversity Initiative Quota. "It's Alina Brooks," she corrected, knowing full well the machine couldn't care less. "Diversity Initiative Quota confirmed," the kiosk repeated, completely ignoring her correction. "Please proceed to dormitory assignment. Be advised, Earth mammals are requested to maintain standard hygiene protocols." Alina sighed. 1 minute in, and already being reminded of humanity's galactic reputation as the smelly, technologically backward species whose only notable contribution to interstellar culture was an inexplicable abundance of cat videos. As she navigated the metallic hallways, she couldn't help but gawk at her fellow cadets. There were 6-armed luminescent beings gliding by, half-organic, half-mechanical constructs clicking and whirring, and what appeared to be a sentient gas cloud contained in an exoskeleton suit. The hallways were lined with portraits of past Academy leaders, predominantly large-headed beings with an excessive number of horns and medals. "Look, another biped with only 4 limbs," she heard a crystal-like being whisper to its companion. "So anatomically inefficient. And just 1 head," the companion replied. "How do they process multiple thought streams? No wonder they're still struggling with basic wormhole stabilization." Alina squared her shoulders and kept walking. She'd known what she was getting into. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic community, and the Academy's diversity initiative was the only reason she, a farm girl from the galactic backwater of Earth, was even allowed to walk these hallowed halls. Her planet was considered barely more advanced than a pre-warp civilization, better at creating memes than meaningful technology. After several wrong turns and one embarrassing incident where she accidentally walked into what turned out to be a methane-breathing species relaxation chamber, Alina finally found her assigned quarters. The door still had a maintenance closet sign partially visible beneath the new Cadet Quarters 437B label. The door hissed open to reveal a cramped space with 2 sleeping platforms. On one of them sat what appeared to be a pulsating fungal colony. It turned, or rather, rippled, toward her. "You are emitting photons at an alarming frequency," the fungus said in a surprisingly melodious voice. "The overhead illumination is already excessive." "Saw thee?" Alina replied, unsure what she was apologizing for. "Terrestrial mammals," the fungus sighed, its surface rippling with what might have been exasperation. "Always so. Bright. I requested a roommate from the shadow dimensions of Nox 5. Alina shoved her bay on her assigned platform. Well, they gave you me instead. I'm Alina." "I'm we," the fungus replied. "But you may address this collective as Mix." "Nice to meet you, Mix," Alina said, trying to be diplomatic. "I'll try to be less bright." As she unpacked her meager belongings, Alina overheard 2 cadets passing by her open door. "Did you hear? General Orvex is conducting an inspection tomorrow. The Supreme Commander of the Tremulan Fleet? Here. Yes, full ceremonial review. And you know how he feels about humans. Barely tolerated diplomatic necessity. Wasn't that his exact quote?" Their voices faded as they moved down the corridor, but Alina had heard enough. General Orvex, the legendary commander who had won the Battle of Cygnus Void with just 3 dreadnoughts against an entire rebel fleet. And apparently, he wasn't a fan of her species. "Perfect," she muttered to herself, carefully aligning her regulation boots at the foot of her sleeping platform. "I'll just keep my head down, blend in, and graduate without incident." Mix made it sound like bubbling soup. "Your species' capacity for self-delusion is your most endearing quality." Alina glanced at her fungal roommate. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all, light emitter. Mix replied, somehow managing to sound sarcastic despite lacking a face. Nothing at all. The ceremonial grounds of the academy were a vast expanse of polished metal, designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and gravitational preferences. Alina stood at the end of her squadron's formation, tugging uncomfortably at her collar. The uniform they'd assigned her was clearly designed for someone, with a longer neck and broader shoulders. Shoulders back, human, hissed the four-armed cadet beside her. Do you want to embarrass the entire Gamma Squadron? Before Alina could respond, a fanfare of what sounded like electronic bagpipes and quantum harmonizers erupted across the grounds. A floating platform descended from one of the station's upper levels, surrounded by an honor guard carrying so many flags and ceremonial weapons that it looked like a mobile military museum. And there, standing at the center of it all, was General Orvex. The general was impressive, even by alien standards. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, his scale blue skin was adorned with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in what was presumably a display of his rank and accomplishments. His head bore 3 swept-back horns, each etched with metallic inlays, and his 4 eyes, arranged in a horizontal line across his face, scanned the assembled cadets with predatory intensity. Attention for the Supreme Commander of the Tremulan Defense Forces, His Martial Excellence, Conqueror of the Cygnus Void, Pacifier of the Omicron Rebellion, General First Class Orvex Velthum, bellowed an aide with such volume that Alina wondered if vocal amplification was surgically installed. The assembled cadets snapped to attention, a challenging feat given the diversity of body types. Alina did her best, though she noticed her bootlaces had come undone. She desperately hoped no one would notice as General Orvex began his inspection, moving slowly down the ranks with his entourage in tow. The general stopped occasionally to ask questions or make observations, his voice a rumbling bass that seemed to vibrate the deck plates beneath him. As he drew closer to Alina's position, she could feel sweat beginning to form on her brow. The station's environmental controls were calibrated for the comfort of the majority species, which meant humans were perpetually overheated. Finally, the general reached Alina's section. His 4 eyes passed over the cadets, narrowing slightly as they landed on her. He paused. You, he said, pointing a clawed finger directly at Alina. Step forward. Heart pounding, Alina took 1 step forward, accidentally treading on her loose bootlace and stumbling slightly. The general's bioluminescent patterns flashed what she assumed was disapproval. His eyes focused on her chest, and Alina realized with horror that she had attached her squadron insignia upside down in her rush to dress that morning. Cadet, General Orvex said, his voice eerily calm. Are you aware that the Tremulan Empire once obliterated an entire moon for a breach of military protocol? Alina swallowed hard. No, sir. And yet here you stand, representing your primitive planet with such spectacular disregard for basic discipline. He turned to address the assembled cadets. This future defenders of galactic peace is why protocol exists. This human cannot even dress herself properly, and we are expected to entrust such creatures with advanced weaponry. Alina felt her face burning with embarrassment and a touch of anger. It was just an insignia, for heaven's sake, not a breach of the Galactic Peace Accords. What happened next occurred so quickly that many witnesses later gave conflicting accounts. General Orvex turned back to Alina, raised his hand, and with a swift motion that one cadet later described as like watching a ceremonial war fan unfold, slapped Alina across the face. The sound echoed across the suddenly silent ceremonial grounds. Alina's head snapped to the side from the impact, her cheeks stinging from the contact with the general's scaled hand. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had frozen in shock. Then, General Orvex made a strangled sound. Alina turned back to face him, expecting further reprimand. Instead, she found the general staring at his hand with an expression of dawning horror. His blue scales were rapidly shifting to a vibrant purple, and his 4 eyes had begun to dilate unevenly. What is? He stammered, his formerly commanding voice now high and unsteady. He swayed on his feet, nearly toppling his aide. Then the general began to laugh. Not a chuckle or a dignified expression of amusement, but a full-body, uncontrolled cascade of giggles that seemed utterly at odds with his imposing presence. "The stars!" he exclaimed, gesturing wildly at nothing in particular. "They're singing. Can you hear them singing?" The general's honor guard exchanged panicked looks as their commander dropped to his knees, still giggling uncontrollably. "Everything is beautiful," he slurred, his bioluminescent patterns cycling through colors faster than a malfunctioning strobe light. So beautiful." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ceremonial grounds. A computerized voice announced, "Biological contamination protocol engaged. Interspecies contact violation detected. Medical response team. To ceremonial grounds immediately." This is not a drill. Within moments, the area was swarming with medical personnel in sealed environmental suits. They surrounded the general, who was now lying on his back, making snow angel motions against the metal deck while mumbling about tasting the color blue. A containment field shimmered into existence around Alina as decontamination foam sprayed from ceiling panels, coating everyone within a 10-meter radius. Through the chaos, Alina stood frozen in shock, her mind struggling to process what was happening. "Don't move, human!" shouted a medical officer through an amplified mask. "Your biochemistry has triggered a severe reaction in the general. Remain still for quarantine protocols." As Alina watched the general being loaded onto a hovering stretcher, still giggling and now attempting to braid an aide's ceremonial tassels, she couldn't help but wonder how a simple slap had turned into a galactic incident. "I don't understand," she said to no one in particular. "He hit me." A nearby medical technician, busy scanning the area with some sort of handheld device, paused long enough to explain, "Tremulins have never had direct skin contact with humans before. Apparently, your skin secretions act as a powerful hallucinogen to their species. He's experiencing what we'd classify as an extreme euphoric episode." "From touching my face?" Alina asked incredulously. "Precisely," the technician replied. "And now we have a diplomatic crisis on our hands." As Alina was escorted away under heavy guard, she heard one Academy official frantically communicating with what sounded like Galactic Command. "No, sir, we had no idea human biochemistry could." "Yes, sir, full quarantine already implemented." "No, sir, the general is not in danger. He's just extremely happy at the moment." From behind her containment field, Alina watched the ceremonial grounds dissolve into controlled chaos. Her last glimpse before being led away was of her fungal roommate Mix, somehow looking smug despite being a colony of spores. "I told you," Mix seemed to say without words. Self-delusion. Alina's new quarters made her converted maintenance closet look like a broom cupboard by comparison. The spacious room featured actual windows overlooking the station's outer ring, furniture calibrated to human physiology, and environmental controls she could actually adjust. The only drawback was the massive biohazard, "No contact" warning plastered across her door, and the continuous patrol of security personnel outside. "Good morning, Cadet Brooks," chirped GR-12, the spherical monitoring robot assigned to her after the incident. It hovered at a precise 2-meter distance, close enough to observe, far enough to avoid any potential contamination. "Morning, Jar," Alina mumbled, pulling herself out of bed. Her former roommate, Mix, had been relocated, or had relocated itself, leaving Alina in solitary luxury. "What's on the agenda for today? More isolation? More tests? You have been exempted from standard cadet activities pending further investigation," GR-12 informed her cheerfully. "However, your breakfast selection has been upgraded to Officer Class 2. Would you prefer the protein-enhanced nutrient sphere or the synthesized traditional Earth breakfast?" "The second one," Alina said, not particularly hopeful about the station's interpretation of traditional Earth breakfast. As she prepared for another day of isolation, Alina couldn't help but notice the news feed displayed on her room's information panel. The headline, "Human Touch Sparks Galactic Panic," floated above footage of General Orvex's meltdown, edited to include dramatic music and slow-motion replays of his face, transitioning from stern authority to blissful delirium. Smaller headlines scrolled beneath. Tremulant Embassy demands investigation, human biochemistry, weapon or accident, and Academy implements emergency contact protocols for all Terran cadets. Alina sighed. 3 days had passed since the incident, and she'd been subjected to countless medical scans, interviews, and what felt suspiciously like interrogations disguised as information-gathering sessions. The door chimed, and after proper decontamination procedures, a tall, insectoid being in an Academy administrative uniform entered. Unlike the medical staff, the administrator wore only minimal protective gear, a thin pair of gloves, and a small filter over what Alina assumed were breathing apparatus. Cadet Brooks, the administrator clicked through translator apparatus. I am Administrative Coordinator Vivex. I have been assigned to inform you of certain developments. Am I being expelled? Alina asked, bracing herself for the worst. Expelled. Zizivex's antennae twitched in what might have been surprise. Quite the contrary. Your situation has attracted attention at the highest levels of the Galactic Alliance. The administrator handed her a sealed datapad. Using an extension rod to avoid proximity. You have been reclassified as a Category Z potential asset. Your training regimen will be modified accordingly. I don't understand, Alina said, scanning the datapad's contents with growing confusion. Asset? For what? The biochemical reaction you triggered in General Orvex has significant strategic implications, ZZVex explained, maintaining a careful distance. The ability to incapacitate Tremulan military leadership without permanent harm is valuable. Alina looked up from the datapad. You want to use me as a weapon? Asset, ZZVex corrected smoothly. And not use, train. Develop. Your unique capabilities represent an opportunity for strategic advantage in certain diplomatic scenarios. My unique capability to make people high by slapping them. Alina couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. The Galactic Security Council prefers the term non-lethal biochemical deterrent, ZZVex replied without a trace of irony. You are scheduled for a meeting with the Strategic Development Committee at 1,400 hours. GR-12 will escort you. After the administrator departed, Alina flopped back on her bed. This is insane, she told the ceiling. I came here to learn starship navigation, not to be a walking biological weapon. Your designation has been upgraded from Cadet to Strategic Asset Probationary. GR-12 informed her helpfully. Your meal privileges have also been increased accordingly. Great, Alina muttered. I can eat better food in my fancy prison. The next few days were a blur of classified briefings, specialized training sessions, and increasingly bizarre capability assessments. Alina found herself in secure conference rooms with military officials, xenobiologists, and diplomatic strategists, all discussing her as if she were a newly discovered technology rather than a person. The potential applications are extraordinary, enthused a tentacled scientist during one such meeting. Controlled exposure could be used in hostage situations, defensive perimeters, even specialized diplomatic engagements. We must consider ethical implications, countered a holographic representative from the Galactic Ethics Committee. Deploying a sentient being as a biochemical agent raises numerous concerns. Throughout these discussions, Alina sat silently, wearing regulation gloves and watching as beings from across the galaxy debated her future. She had gone from backworld diversity admission to strategic asset in less than a week, and she still wasn't sure if this was an improvement. Her status on the station had transformed as well. Corridors emptied when she approached, with cadets pressing themselves against walls to maintain maximum distance. In training simulations, she was given her own separate console, cordoned off with warning markers. Even the instructors kept their distance, teaching her via remote interfaces. The whispers followed her everywhere. Cadet Slapgate, the Euphoria Trigger, General Slayer. Some were afraid, others amused, but all treated her as something other than just another cadet. Enjoying your celebrity status? Asked Commander Lin, one of the few officers who still spoke to Alina as a person rather than a phenomenon. The commander oversaw specialized training and had been assigned to assess Alina's tactical integration potential. "About as much as I'd enjoy a root canal," Alina replied, adjusting her mandatory gloves. "I didn't ask for any of this." Commander Lin nodded sympathetically. "Few who change history intended to do so. But now that you have, the question is, what will you do with it?" Before Alina could answer, her communication device beeped with a priority message. "Strategic asset Brooks required for Security Council demonstration, diplomatic suite, immediate attendance requested." Commander Lin raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like your audience awaits." The diplomatic suite turned out to be a vast chamber designed for interspecies negotiations. Today, it hosted representatives from 7 different worlds, each seated in environmental conditions calibrated to their specific needs. All eyes, sensory organs, and optical receptors turned to Alina as she entered. "Ah, the human has arrived," announced a tall, crystalline being. "Now we can begin the assessment." For the next 3 hours, Alina stood in the center of the room, answering questions and occasionally being asked to remove a glove and stand near, but not touch, various sensors. The representatives watched readings, discussed implications, and occasionally argued in languages her translator couldn't fully process. "Is it true that all humans possess this biochemical property?" asked a representative encased in what appeared to be a mobile aquarium. "As far as we know," replied the Academy's chief medical officer, "though potency may vary between individuals." "And can be weaponized, distilled, replicated, pressed a particularly militant-looking delegate. That information is classified," interjected a galactic security official. Throughout the demonstration, Alina noticed several attendees surreptitiously increasing their distance whenever she moved. One particularly nervous diplomat had encased himself in what appeared to be a portable containment bubble, despite being a species that, according to her xenobiology training, would be completely immune to human biochemistry. As the demonstration concluded, Alina was escorted back to her quarters by GR-12, who seemed unusually silent. "Jar, have you even told General Orvex what happened?" she asked as they traveled through empty corridors. "The general has been informed of the biochemical nature of the incident," GR-12 replied after a noticeable pause. "He is currently recovering at the Tremulan Embassy Medical Facility. And intelligence reports indicate he is displeased." Alina snorted. "I bet that's an understatement." GR-12's optical sensors adjusted focus. There have been 17 separate diplomatic communications from the Tremulan High Command regarding the incident. The content is classified, but the tone has been assessed as aggressively concerned. As they reached her quarters, Alina noticed something new. A security detail of 4 armed guards positioned outside her door. "Are those for keeping people out, or keeping me in?" she asked quietly. GR-12's spherical body rotated slightly. "Both, Cadet Brooks. Both." That night, as Alina lay in bed staring at the unfamiliar stars through her viewport, she couldn't help but wonder how a simple slap had cascaded into what was apparently becoming a galactic security situation. She had wanted adventure when she applied to the Academy. True, but not this kind of adventure. Not being treated like a walking biohazard or a potential superweapon. "I just wanted to fly spaceships," she whispered to the stars. As if in answer, her communication device chimed with a new message. "Priority notification. Interspecies Biochemical Summit, Quoria Prime. Strategic Asset Brooks, attendance mandatory. Departure, 0600 hours tomorrow." Attached was a briefing document outlining the Galactic Alliance Emergency Summit on Terran Biochemical Hazard Management. Apparently, an entire interplanetary conference had been convened to discuss her sweat glands. Alina buried her face in her pillow and groaned. So much for graduating without incident. The planet Quoria Prime was famous for 2 things: its perfect atmospheric balance that made it hospitable to 87% of known sentient species, and its mind-numbingly complex bureaucracy. As Alina's transport shuttle descended toward the planet's surface, she could see the sprawling government complex that would host the Interspecies Biochemical Summit. a maze of interconnected buildings that somehow managed to look both architecturally impressive and soul-crushingly institutional. Approaching final descent to Korea Prime Diplomatic Landing Zone 7G, announced the pilot. All passengers are reminded that Korean customs requires 14 separate identification verifications. Please have your documentation ready. Alina adjusted the specialized environmental suit she'd been issued for the summit. Unlike the bulky hazmat gear worn by medical personnel back at the academy, this suit was designed to look almost like a normal uniform while maintaining a complete barrier between her skin and the outside world. The gloves were particularly advanced, thin enough to allow dexterity while ensuring no skin cells or moisture could escape. GR-12 hovered nearby, now upgraded to version 12.1 with what appeared to be additional monitoring equipment, and for some reason Alina couldn't fathom, a small speaker system that occasionally emitted soft jazz when the robot was idle. Your heart rate is elevated. Strategic Asset Brooks, GR-12.1 noted. Would you like me to activate the calming audio selection? No thanks, Jar, Alina replied, gazing out at the approaching spires of the government complex. I'm just wondering how many ways this conference can go wrong. The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Alina was immediately surrounded by her security detail, a mixed team of Academy guards and Galactic Alliance peacekeepers. They formed a perimeter around her as she disembarked, keeping other travelers at a respectful distance. The Korean customs process was every bit as tedious as promised, made more complicated by Alina's special status. Each of the 14 checkpoints required not only her identification, but also verification of her containment suit integrity and documentation of her strategic asset classification. By the time they finally cleared customs, the main conference was already underway in the Grand Conciliation Chamber. Alina could hear the amplified voice of some dignitary discussing protocols for managing unforeseen biochemical interactions as she was escorted through a side entrance. The chamber itself was impressive, a vast circular space with tiered seating arrangements to accommodate delegates from dozens of worlds. Each species had its own section equipped with appropriate atmospheric controls, gravity adjustments, and translation interfaces. In the center was a speaker's platform surrounded by an array of sensors and communication equipment. As Alina entered, a hush fell over the assembly. Hundreds of beings, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form, turned to observe her arrival. She fought the urge to wave awkwardly. "Ah, the primary subject has arrived," announced the current speaker, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin. "Delegates, may I present strategic asset Alina Brooks of Earth, the catalyst for our gathering today." Alina was escorted to a specially prepared seating area, isolated from the main assembly by a subtle but unmistakable barrier field. As she sat down, she noticed that the nearest delegates had discreetly shifted their positions to increase the distance between them and her section. "As I was saying," continued the speaker, "the unexpected reaction between human biochemistry and tremulant physiology represents both a challenge and an opportunity for our interstellar community. The proposed Terran contact protocols before you outline a comprehensive framework for managing future interactions." A holographic display appeared above the central platform, showing a complex document with multiple appendices and subsections. Alina skimmed the visible portions, noting phrases like mandatory dermal barriers, pre-contact written consent forms, and emergency euphoria countermeasures. "This is ridiculous," she whispered to GR-12.1. "They're treating a little sweat like it's a doomsday weapon." "From a certain perspective, it is," replied a deep voice from behind her. Alina turned to find Commander Lin taking a seat in her isolated section, noticeably without any protective gear beyond standard gloves. "Commander, what are you doing here?" Providing a voice of reason in what has become a circus of overreaction, Lin replied quietly. "Someone needs to remind everyone that you're a cadet, not a biological arsenal." Before they could continue their conversation, the chamber's main doors opened with a dramatic hiss. A procession entered, led by ceremonial guards in tremulant military regalia. And there, encased in an environmental suit so comprehensive it resembled mobile armor, was General Orvex. The general moved with less of the fluid grace Alina remembered from the inspection. His suit made his movements somewhat clumsy, but his 4 eyes, visible through a transparent faceplate, still conveyed the same intensity. Those eyes locked onto Alina immediately, narrowing in what she could only interpret as barely contained fury. "The Tremulan delegation acknowledges the assembly," announced one of his aides. "General First Class Orvex Valthum will now address the summit." The general took position on the central platform, his amplified voice filling the chamber. "Delegates of the Galactic Alliance, I come before you today not only as a representative of the Tremulan Empire, but as the victim of an unprovoked biochemical assault." Murmurs rippled through the assembly as translation devices conveyed his words in dozens of languages. What was presented as an unexpected reaction was, in fact, a demonstration of Terra's most insidious weapon, their very biology. Orvex continued, his bioluminescent patterns visible even through his suit, pulsing with emotion. "We must ask ourselves, was this truly an accident, or the first deployment of a carefully concealed biological agent?" "That's absurd," Alina couldn't stop herself from exclaiming. All eyes in the chamber turned toward her, and Alina suddenly realized she had spoken aloud. Commander Lin gave her a warning look, but it was too late. "The human objects," General Orvex stated, his voice dripping with disdain. Perhaps she would care to explain why her species failed to disclose this biochemical property when joining the Academy. A spotlight suddenly illuminated Alina's section. Jar 12.1 hovered protectively closer as she stood, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. "Because we didn't know," she said simply. "Humans have never had skin contact with Tremulans before. How could we disclose a reaction we weren't aware of?" "Convenient ignorance," scoffed Orvex. "The Tremulan Empire proposes immediate restrictions on all human movement within Alliance space. Containment protocols must be established, and all Terrans must be registered as potential biochemical threats." The chamber erupted into debate, with delegates calling out positions and counterproposals. Some voiced support for the general's hardline approach, while others advocated for more measured responses. The Arcturian Confederation supports a research-based approach called One Delegate. The Rigelian Assembly demands complete quarantine of all Terran individuals, countered another. As the chaos continued, Commander Lin leaned toward Alina. "This is going exactly as the hardliners planned. They're using fear to push through restrictions that would normally never pass." "What can we do?" Alina asked. "Sometimes," Lin replied cryptically, "the best defense is a demonstration." Before Alina could ask what that meant, the chamber's security alarm suddenly blared. Red warning lights pulsed throughout the space as a computerized voice announced, "Security breach detected. Unknown entities have entered the secure perimeter. All delegates, please remain in your designated areas." Through the main entrance stormed a squad of Tremulan soldiers, their distinctive armor identifying them as members of the elite Imperial Guard. Unlike the general, they wore minimal environmental protection, apparently confident in their ability to avoid contact with a single human in the vast chamber. "By order of the Tremulan High Command," announced their leader, "we are assuming protective custody of the biological threat designated Terran Asset Brooks. For the safety of this assembly, she will be remanded to Tremulan authority." The chamber descended into chaos as delegates protested the violation of diplomatic protocols. Security forces moved to intercept the Tremulan squad, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Alina found herself being pulled back by Commander Lin as the Tremulan soldiers advanced toward their section. Jar 12.1 positioned itself between them, its speaker suddenly blaring not jazz, but warning signals. "Unauthorized approach to strategic asset Brooks. Maintain minimum safe distance of 2 meters." The lead Tremulan soldier swatted the robot aside with a contemptuous gesture. "Tremulan battle armor is rated for all known biological contaminants. Your human secretions cannot penetrate our protection." As the soldiers closed in, Alina made a split-second decision. With a swift motion, she removed her specialized gloves, exposing her bare hands. "I wouldn't be so sure about that," she said, raising her hands in what could either be surrender or warning. The advancing soldiers hesitated, looking to their leader for guidance. The lead soldier scoffed, the sound distorted through his helmet speaker. "Primitive intimidation tactics," he said, reaching for Alina with an armored hand. "Your species always relies on bluffs when outmatched." "Not bluffing," Alina replied, and as the soldier grabbed her arm, she placed her bare palm directly against the exposed section of his armor's wrist joint, the flexible material necessary for movement. For a moment, nothing happened. The soldier began to laugh, turning to his comrades. "See, our technology is superior to their primitive." His words cut off abruptly as his body went rigid. Through his helmet's faceplate, Alina could see his eyes widening, pupils dilating rapidly. Then, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, he collapsed to his knees, armor clattering against the chamber floor. It's... The soldier's voice had transformed from militant to dreamy. "It's like swimming in starlight." He began to giggle, the sound incongruous coming from an elite warrior. "Has anyone noticed how beautiful the ceiling is? So many colors." The remaining soldiers backed away hastily, their formation breaking as they retreated from Alina's outstretched hands. One of them activated an emergency beacon, calling for extraction as his comrade continued to roll on the floor, making snow angel motions and commenting on the musical taste of the chamber's architecture. In the stunned silence that followed, Alina slowly put her gloves back on. The entire chamber stared at her, witnessing firsthand the effect she'd been trying to explain. From his position on the speaker's platform, General Orvex watched the scene unfold with all four eyes widened in what appeared to be a mixture of vindication and horror. His bioluminescent patterns had frozen in a pattern that Alina now recognized as the tremulant equivalent of shocked realization. "As you can see," Commander Lin said, stepping forward to address the assembly, "the reaction is indeed real, but hardly the calculated bioweapon General Orvex has described. It is a natural biochemical incompatibility, one that poses no threat when proper protocols are followed." The chamber remained silent as medical personnel rushed to attend to the incapacitated soldier, who was now attempting to compose poetry about the geometric symphony of the room's design. Alina caught General Orvex's gaze across the chamber. For a brief moment, something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, that they were both pawns in a larger game of interspecies politics. Then the general straightened, his armored suit whirring with the movement. "The Tremulant Empire withdraws its proposal for complete quarantine," he announced, his voice noticeably less commanding than before. "However, we maintain that proper protocols must be established. What we have witnessed is not a weapon, perhaps, but certainly a significant biological hazard." The chamber erupted in murmurs as delegates processed this unexpected concession. The meeting chair, a Quarian official with 6 slender arms, raised all of them for silence. "In light of this demonstration," the chair stated, "this summit will recess for 2 hours while the draft committee revises the proposed Terran contact protocols. We thank General Orvex for his flexibility and strategic asset Brooks for her clarification." As the delegates filed out, many casting curious or apprehensive glances in her direction, Alina found herself surrounded by her security detail once more. "Commanderling not that upbuilding." "Sometimes the most effective diplomacy is simply showing rather than telling," she said, "though I suspect your methods won't be taught in standard negotiation classes anytime soon." "I didn't plan that," Alina admitted, flexing her fingers inside her replaced gloves. "I just reacted. Sometimes that's all we can do," Lin replied. "Come on. We have 2 hours to prepare our counter-proposal before they reconvene." The remainder of the summit passed in a blur of diplomatic language, technical specifications, and bureaucratic maneuvering. By the end of 3 exhausting days, the Galactic Alliance had formally adopted the Terran Contact Clause, handle with strategic care. A 67-page document that specified in excruciating detail everything from required protective equipment to mandatory pre-notification forms for intentional contact with humans. Throughout the proceedings, General Orvex maintained a notably subdued presence, speaking only when necessary and keeping his environmental suit sealed at all times. Occasionally, Alina would catch him watching her with an inscrutable expression in his four eyes. Not quite hatred, but certainly not friendliness. On the final day, as the delegates prepared to depart, Alina was surprised to receive a notification that the general had requested a brief, supervised meeting. The meeting took place in a specially prepared room with transparent barriers separating its occupants. General Orvex stood on one side, still in his protective suit though, with the helmet removed, while Alina waited on the other, accompanied by GR 12.1 and Commander Lin. Cadet Brooks, the general began, his voice slightly distorted through the communication system. I wish to speak with you directly before returning to Tremulan space. Alina straightened to attention out of habit. Yes, General. The incident between us has complicated interstellar relations, he continued, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing in a slow, measured rhythm. But it has also revealed a significant gap in our mutual understanding of xenobiology. That's one way of putting it, sir, Alina replied cautiously. The general's four eyes blinked in sequence. A tremulant expression that Alina had learned indicated something between resignation and acknowledgement. I wish to formally apologize for my actions during the Academy inspection, he said, each word seeming to cost him considerable effort. Physical discipline is standard procedure in Tremulan military training, but I failed to consider species-specific protocols. That was an oversight on my part. Alina blinked in surprise. The last thing she had expected was an apology from the formidable general. Thank you, sir, she replied. Though to be fair, I didn't know my skin would do what it did either. Indeed, Orvex said, his patterns briefly flashing what might have been amusement. It seems supreme discipline means little when faced with. He paused, searching for the words, human perspiration. Commander Lin cleared her throat softly, reminding Alina of protocol. I accept your apology, General, Alina said formally, and I apologize for any discomfort my biochemistry caused you. The general made a dismissive gesture with one clawed hand. What's done is done. The Tremulan Empire is already implementing new training protocols for troops who may encounter humans. We are calling it biochemical composure training. I hope it's effective, sir. As do I, Orvex replied. After a moment's hesitation, he added, the experience was not entirely unpleasant, but it is not one I wish to repeat in a military context. With that cryptic statement, the general inclined his head in formal acknowledgement and turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. You have potential, Cadet Brooks, he said. Perhaps not in the way either of us expected, but potential nonetheless. I will be watching your career with interest. As the general departed, Alina turned to Commander Lin with raised eyebrows. Was that a threat or a compliment? With Tremulans, Lin replied with a slight smile, it's often both.